So ladies and gentlemen, this is a very well-versed speaker, and I'm excited to introduce Mr. Bill Rancik.
Bill, if you're up for it, man, are you open to do a little bit of Q&A?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, we got time.
Yeah, let's do that for about 15 minutes, and then we'll break. So first of all, we got you a little gift here.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
A bunch of Legacy gear.
Great.
Like this is our logo. And then, so we also have my wife and I and another business partner. We create children's books based on the business principles from a lot of like the classic personal development books, like Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Magic of Thinking Big, and books like that.
Awesome.
So
Well,
we have some children's books in there. I know Duke's 10 years old now.
He's 10. My son's 10. Yeah.
But I have adults that read these and they're like, damn, man, don't tell anybody, but I got a lot of good insights out of that. So
My son was on the internet the other day trying to convince me to buy a private jet. I'm like, dude, you better pump the brakes. It's like, Dad, the Challenger 300, it only burns 200 gallons an hour. I'm like, okay, well, you can pay for it, buddy. So he's got big ambitions, this kid. He's going to go places, I think.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Let's start out with that. So we have a couple of microphones out. So if you guys have any questions, raise your hand. We'll come and bring a microphone to you. Let's talk about that, right? Like, so your son is 10 years old. First of all, do you think entrepreneurs are born or made?
Well, I think you probably have it in you, right? I think it's something like my mom knew early on. My parents were both school teachers, so for me, I didn't meet other entrepreneurs until I was in college, and I always say I started this business when I was in college, where I went and washed and waxed boats. My buddy and I did it, and I got to meet all these rich people. First time I'd ever met rich people in my life, because the people my mom and dad were hanging out with were other school teachers or principals or people in the education field. So I got to meet these wealthy people, and I realized, shit, they're no different than me. Like, I always thought that you had to be like this, I don't know what, it was magic. And those summers I spent washing and waxing those boats changed my life. It didn't make me a millionaire in those summers, but it eventually made me a millionaire because I realized that I could do it too.
And I think that for a lot of us, that borrowed belief, right? Seeing somebody else, you and I were talking over there. I remember when I got started in real estate, I saw people making money who were no different than us, no different than anyone. And I'm like, if this person's making money, I'm going to get rich in this business, right? Like, because if they can do it, I know that I can do it, right? And then once you do it once, now like, okay, I can do it again, I can do it again. And that belief ends up building more and more confidence with those little tiny wins. So how have you instilled principles of success and achievement and maybe entrepreneurship into your son? Have you guys talked about that stuff? Obviously, he's very financially literate. He pays attention to what's going on. How have you cultivated that?
Well, you know what? The greatest gift my parents ever gave me was, it was okay to make mistakes. It was okay to have failures, but it was never okay not to try. And I think what's happening today, and I'm not saying anyone in this room, but a lot of parents, everything has to be perfect, right? I'm going to get you a quarterback coach. You're 9. I'm going to get you this, that. These kids, everything has to be the best, the best, the best. And at a certain age, they're like, I don't even want to try it because you're putting so much heat, weight on me to do everything perfectly. Kids give up, right? And it's just too much for them. You have to let them fail because that's life, right? And I was not afraid to fail. I'm still not afraid to fail, right? And I think I see it with like some of my nephews, right? That they can't handle the pressure, but it's self-inflicted, and it was the way they were brought up. And I think that was something that I want to instill in my son. I'm not going to catch him all the time. It's the hardest thing you do as a parent, right? Letting them fall, or letting them fail, or letting them have to deal with things on their own. But I'm learning, and it's hard. But I got to just step back and let him, take the falls and deal with things on his own. I can't always be there to save him.
Are you seeing any of those signs of entrepreneurship in him? Some of the ones that you had?
So my son, I thought it was going to be a great idea. I'm going to teach him a lesson. We own a little cabin on a golf course in Idaho. And he and I went out one day or 2 days, and we went and hunted for golf balls, right? Like in the woods, and got in the ponds and got dirty. That's what I used to do as a kid. And our house is on the 17th green. So my son made these signs, him and his buddy Max, Duke and Max's used golf ball business, $2 for, a white ball, $3 for a colored or whatever, soccer ball, the cool-looking ones that are, I'm not a huge golfer. And I let him go out there for a few hours, And I didn't realize this, but by the time you're on the 17th hole, these guys are on vacation. It's summer. They're all juiced up, right? So they're throwing these kids 20s, 50s, right? Michael Jordan was there one afternoon, slipped him each a hundy, right? My son comes back after 3 hours of work. I got 400, Dad. I'm buying dinner tonight. So I had to shut the operation down because it was wasn't achieving the lesson that I wanted it to achieve, right? It was doing the exact opposite.
But Michael's not on Social Security either, so you can milk that a little bit,
He had a stack of dough in his pocket, and he thought that's how you made money, and it doesn't come that easy. That's not reality. But he's out doing other things.
If you put yourself in the right rooms, I guess it does, Who's got some questions? Raise your hand. Can we get a microphone up here, please? If you have a question, please raise your hand, and Hannes will come and bring it over to you.
Yeah, but what happened to your cigar company? You talk about going to work for Donald, but didn't you still have your company after that?
No, I sold the company in 2001, and then the company that bought it sold it again. So I stayed on for a year or two as an employee, but I'd sold it in 2001. It was not hard to let that go. No. The world changed, and I felt like I needed it. You used to be able to smoke cigars in steakhouses and the world was a lot different when I started the business to where it is now, So I was ready to go. I was ready to move on to bigger things.
All those smoking laws went into effect in the early 2003, 4, 5
That's right.
range.
Yep.
I remember in college, you'd walk into a bar, you couldn't, your clothes would smell like smoke. And that was freshman year, and then by sophomore year, they got rid of all of it. Yeah, it must have been tough.
Yeah, even casinos now, it's different. So, no, I was ready to go. It was time for me to move on. I wanted to get into real estate. That was something I was really interested in getting into.
Question?
Bill. Yeah, so I heard you say you have 3 things that you avoid, and the third one was people that don't know their own value.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to ask, right, there are people that don't know their own value, but you see something in them that they don't see in themselves, and I'm wondering if there's a distinction to be made between those people and, if there's something to be said about people that can change that they can come to seeing their own value, or have you explain a little bit more what you mean by that otherwise?
Well, I think for some people they got to figure it out on their own, right? And that's whether it's through experience, whether it's through getting, a lot of us in our own minds, we catastrophize things, right? It's normal. Everyone has anxiety at some level. It's just a given. And what I do is when I'm looking at a deal or when I'm trying to understand if this is the right investment, my mind, I always go to worst case scenario, right? That's what makes all of us successful, right? We're healthy. It's a healthy paranoia. Hi. So what I do is I call it my 99-cent solution, right? And I go get a legal pad. It costs about $1. And I write down the pros and the cons, worst case scenarios. And when I read that legal pad back, it's never nearly as bad as it plays out in my mind, right? So that's how I know my value. That's how I know I can get out of my own way a little bit. But some people they're not wired to be like everyone in this room, right? And that's okay, right? Because you need to have all different kinds to make the world go round. It's almost like an alcoholic, right? You have to kind of hit rock bottom. Only the alcoholic is going to get himself right. Parents can cry, whatever. The wife, he's got to realize or she's got to realize it on their own, right? They got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think to realize your own value, if you have the ability, you're going to be able to do it.
I mean, the pain has to be so painful, right? Or there must be such a desire for change.
Or just knowing that you can do better, right? Like I always knew that I was put on this earth to do more than sell metal. Not there's anything wrong with that, right? But I was selling steel, and I looked 30 years down the road, and I saw that guy packing up his stuff, getting sent out packing, and I'm like, that's not going to be me. And I knew that I was capable of doing more in this world. Some people, they're happy, and that's great, and they like that safe life. I was not. I wanted greater things. I didn't want to be average,
Trevor.
Yes.
Yeah, question for you. First of all, thank you so much for coming out here and just absolutely bringing that heat.
Oh,
But
Trevor, you gave me a hell of a. That was a. I think you oversold me a little bit on the intro, Trevor. But we're gonna go. We'll talk about it after.
but you talked about being the conductor.
Yeah.
And in the business world, we hear all the time, focus on the one thing. Did you mean be the conductor for the experts in one thing, or are you focusing on being the expert, the orchestrator in multiple things at once?
Well, you gotta. I mean, for me, it's multiple things, right? Everyone said me and my wife getting into the restaurant business was a horrible idea, right? Well, we proved them wrong. You know, it's a $100 million a year operation now. You know, I found the right people, right? I found one of the best restaurant operators in the world, right? He's, you know, I have his two sons and his daughter that I'm partners with, and they created brands like Maggiano's and Corner Bakery and Mona Amiga B, and they have all the Joe Stone crepes. So, you know, I know that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm going to work the hardest. And I know that I'm going to find people who are, right? And I'm going to partner with them. We got into the Italian wine business. We own a Prosecco brand. And we found the most amazing #1 importer of Italian wines in America. And we partnered with them on the deal, right? So we hire great people with marketing. We hire, you know, we find very good people to bring on to our teams. And that's the key. You can't do it alone. You want to, you know, if you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you better have the right people with you.
Right on.
I guess
Thank
my next question kind of goes along the same lines. I wonder when I think of you working with with Donald Trump, right? And I just look at him as what he does with, let's say, hotels, right? And I think of my perspective is excellence, right? I walk into one of those places and I'm just like, wow, how do they get to this level of excellence, right? So I'm wondering for you, what do you think it takes to be excellent when you're thinking about, you wanna, let's say I'm in Airbnb space, right? So I'm always thinking, how can I make places like fantastic, like places like extremely appealing? How can we make those decisions? How can I build a team around it that are even more excited than me to do that?
If you want to get rich in that business, you have to be what they call a state changer. You got to be able to change people's state of mind when they walk in the door, right? There's a great developer, there's a guy's name, Trump's amazing, right? When you go into his hotels, the spas, right? It's your shoulders come down, you feel like you're being pampered, right? Another great guy, this guy named Mike Meldman, he created a company called Discoveryland. And he has created these havens for the ultra rich, right? And I've been fortunate to go visit some of them. And, men's locker rooms have cold tubs, hot tubs, TV, like you have to create things that people won't have in their daily life. I don't want to go to your Airbnb if it's going to be less than the house I'm in now, right? I want to go there to have my state of mind changed. And that's why I'm going to go to your Airbnb, because wow, look, you see what this guy has? He's got a 100-inch TV. I'm going to rent the Airbnb out just to watch the Sunday games, right? Like something that sets you apart, right? Where are you creating value in that Airbnb for me? And that's, if you can answer that, then you're going to get repeat people coming back and having it as a destination spot. And the reviews are going to be through the roof. We do that with our restaurants. Like our restaurants, you can go get Italian anywhere, right? But we hand make our pasta from scratch every morning, right? Our wine list is spectacular. The service, you can't find it anywhere else, right? We source things that you can't get at a normal place, right? We find things, we put the effort in, and it shows.
Chris.
Bill, appreciate you coming, man. I've kind of been secretly jealous of you for probably 10, 15 years. My wife would watch you every night and talk to me about you. Say, you have to come watch this guy. He's so good looking.
Oh, God.
You really need to be more like this guy.
I got to go.
Embarrassed over there. Anyway.
Is your wife here?
Yeah, she's over there.
Oh, where's she at? Hi. How are you?
So,
I'm married happily, but
yeah.
I just want to say hello.
No, we really admire you guys. You're a shining example to us entrepreneurs aspiring. But with the current economic cycle we're going through, political instability, massive debt. I mean, this is a cycle that probably we haven't seen in our lifetime, at least not my lifetime, right? What is the opportunity that you see going into the future as a real estate investor? What are you chasing?
Listen, again, you guys know this world, but, I look at the younger generation, they don't want to own homes, right? So my nephews have no interest. They're in their 20s. Two of them graduated from University of Michigan. One graduated from U of I. That is the furthest thing, and they're like mid to late 20s, right? It's not even on their radar, right? So they're going to rent. So I'm a landlord, right? I own mixed-use properties in Chicago, in downtown Chicago, and I'm continually buying. I'm buying through all cycles, right? It's all averaging in, right? So I just finished a small unit. This partner of mine that brings me buildings, and we just finished, it was like a 7 or 8, I don't know what it was, 8-unit building, which I don't want to do, but we did it, and I'm glad we did it, right? It was just a smaller one to add in, and I think, base hits win games, right? So I don't always have to have a home run on every deal, right? And I think being able to walk away from deals is important. This buddy of mine, Stuart, he once said, he's the guy who got me into the real estate game, and he's brilliant. Got a few thousand keys in Chicago, right? And he said, Bill, some of the best deals I ever did were the ones I didn't do. And I think a lot of us always want to keep that deal going and going and going, right? And, you got to sometimes pick and choose, right? And I think that's important. And again, don't let your egos get in the way. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. And I've done it a lot, Even it's just a feeling. And 99% of the time, that feeling was right. Yes, sir?
Yeah, so it was really neat hearing you talk about your son Duke and mentoring him and bringing him in. Speak a little bit to maybe what you've observed from others and what you're trying to do to pass your entrepreneurial spirit onto the next generation so they're maximizing their potential.
Well, for me, like my son, he in the morning he comes in my room and we watch CNBC together, right? Like financial literacy is something none of these kids have, right? I didn't have it. It's not taught in the schools, right? It's just not. And I think, if I can teach him that, if I can teach him to respect it. I read a book my dad gave me when I was a young man. It was called The Millionaire Next Door. It was written by a professor, a guy named William Danko. It's got to be, the book's got to be 30 or 40 years old by now. But it's still relevant today as it was 25 years ago when I read it. And it's being able to understand and respect money and understand it's a vehicle. And it's a lot of us get caught up with trying to keep up with our neighbors and buying the new car. And I never bought new cars until, the last 5 years or 10 years or whatever it was. But when I was younger, I always bought used cars, you know what I mean? And never shopped at fancy clothing stores or any of that. I had my goal in mind, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew where I wanted to be in life. So for me, I'm trying to teach him how to respect money. And it's difficult when, many of you in this room have achieved a high level of success, and it's difficult for your kids to see the lifestyle you're living, but then expect them to live a different lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, you're in coach, and I'm going to be up here because I've earned it, and you haven't, and that's hard to do for a lot of parents, but you got to do it, Otherwise, they're going to think that that's the way life is, and it's not, because he's going to have to earn it. There's two ways you can ruin your kids. You deprive them of basic necessities, love, food, care, or you give them everything, right? And there's a great documentary on Netflix called Generation Wealth. And it followed these kids from southern, like Beverly Hills, Santa Monica. It followed them over the course of 25 years, and they were all wealthy kids. And just watch it.
I saw that. It's powerful.
Wow.
I have a whole list of notes on it.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to teach him to be a good man, and he prays every night, and we do philanthropic work, and he comes with us, and he sees that to whom much is given, much is expected, and that's important.
Leading by example.
Quick question. Hey,
Yes. Oh, sorry.
hey, Bill. Thank you so much for your story. It was very inspiring. I really appreciate it. My question is, what habits would you say are the most important, especially when it comes to productivity? And how do you maintain, the momentum, especially when you're in that level phase before you reach the exponential phase of success or whatever, and kind of the mindset behind it, so you don't necessarily sabotage yourself for people that are let's say, have the fear of being successful?
Elaborate on that a little bit.
So I probably said a little too much in there, but
Yeah.
well, I guess let's just say, how do you continue to motivate yourself, and what habits do you use to kind of keep that momentum
Yeah,
going?
I got it. Right. I understand. I guess at a certain point when you're doing this, you're doing it more for desire than necessity. Does that make sense? Like today, I enjoy doing this. I don't I don't need to be here today, but I actually enjoy it. It's fun. I love to meet people. This is something that makes me happy to do. And I think in business, you have to find things that you're going to want to do, that you're going to want to wake up at 5:30 in the morning for. I got up at 4:45 today to be here, right? And it was fine. I didn't mind getting out of bed. And I think when you're doing something that you have to struggle and hit the snooze button 4 or 5 times every morning to do, chances are you're not going to be successful at it, right? Because it's going to be painful and brutal, and you're going to fight it tooth and nail. So, I mean, you got to find something that's going to get you jacked up and ready to go in the morning. And hopefully it's real estate. It's a great business to be in, and I think it's the one thing that, God isn't making any more of, So I'm a big believer in it, and my dad, was a big believer in it, and it's something that he really wanted me to get into. Fortunately, I was able to. He didn't have the financial means to do it, but it was something that he kind of ingrained in me, and I listened to him because he was a smart man. Just chose a different path. He wanted to be an educator and help people, and he did, and it was great. But I find things that I enjoy and that I love and that, are I'm going to want to do every day. I know that wasn't the greatest answer, but it's the truth. Yes, sir.
Well, hey, thanks for being here today. Like everyone said that already, but you said a couple of things that really resonated with me. The one, watching an older salesperson being escorted out and kind of watching that. And I had a very similar experience where I'd watch the older sales guys kind of, get taken out to pasture once they cost too much. Yeah. And I found myself becoming one of those guys and costing too much. And I tended to work for companies that needed to be, needed a territory or region fixed. And once it was fixed, I cost a lot, right? And so a lot of people in here in this room who've gone full entrepreneur on their own were a lot braver than I was. I didn't go because I went for it. I was in my second time or third time losing a job in that same scenario where I had improved something, and then I was costly, right? And so
that was your reward.
What was my reward?
No, that was your reward.
Oh, yeah, that was my reward.
Hit the door.
Yeah, that was my reward. And so one of the things I ask about, I'm curious about, you'd given the analogy of having 1 foot on shore and then 1 foot on the boat. And maybe this wasn't your experience because your trajectory, it seems like, was pretty steep from being, maybe, no?
I mean, it was some bump, some turbulence, let's just say. It was not easy.
So I asked it because mine had been a little bit more leveled out because, they don't want on the show or anything like that stuff. I wonder, with that 1 foot and 1 foot, in my instance, did you find that to be the case with some of your personal relationships? And did many of those survive the transition becoming a Bill prior to? Because one of the things I'd done, pretty intentionally was downplay a lot of things that have been accomplished and done because, it's keeping 1 foot here and say, hey, guys, come on. And then the other foot's kind of over here, too, and saying, this is what I'm doing next. Did a lot of your relationships survive the newer you become, or what does that look like for you now?
I've had some friends who I can't talk to them about a certain part of my life, right? Because they're jealous, right? And they don't want to hear it, right? And I get it. And obviously it caused some strain because I'm living this life and some parts of it are pretty cool, right? And I know it, right? And it's like, oh my God, I'm, whatever I get to do. And it was not of any interest because when I would talk, it would make them feel bad about themselves, right? And I know it wasn't my fault, but it's the life they're living. And I instead of getting mad at them, I felt bad for them, right? Because they weren't living the best life that they could be living. And if I told them what I was doing, it would make them suffer, right? So I would intentionally just ask them about themselves. Tell me about this. And they would, he would never ask me about, oh, I saw you do this on TV, whatever it was never brought up, and that was okay. But I will say this, you bring up a very good point, and you have to take inventory on the people you surround yourself with, and it's okay to sometimes love people from afar. Does that make sense? Whether it's family members, whether it's friends, whether it's colleagues or coworkers, because they are bringing you down, right? They are, like I said, they're pulling you down in order to build themselves up. And you can still love them, but at an arm's length. Sometimes you have to fire friends, right? That's okay. That's normal. That's healthy. You can purge sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with it. You shouldn't feel guilty. You have one life to live, right? And at the end of the road, you know, you got to worry about you. You know, do good things along the way. But let me tell you, I just saw this thing on the plane right over, and it said, you know, 4 hours after your funeral, they're going to be planning drinks, and you know, your friends are going to be talking about the football game. And 2 days after your funeral, like it went on and on. It's like, it was absolutely right. Like, you know, we're going to be here for literally a minute. So you want to look back and have no regrets. You know, when you're 80 years old, 90, you're going to be like, damn, I did it. And I did it, you know, and I did great things, and I lived this life that God made me or intended me to live. And I wasn't worried about if my friend here was jealous that I had done great things, or if I had, you know, was an innovator or I was a leader. And that's okay, because you know what? As that ship crosses the ocean, there's people on this side waving goodbye to the ship, and over in Australia, there's people waving hello, you know, and they're greeting the ship. Yes. Yeah, yes, I've tried to bring people along that and if they're not interested, you can't make them, right? You can't make them come along. You know, you just got to be careful. Take inventory, right? Be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with, because you, believe it or not, whether you know it or not, it has an impact on you. And you know, you don't want to have things or people in your life that are going to just sap your energy and your emotion and your drive. That's the worst thing you could do for yourself.
All right, final question. Bill, what is the highest and best use of your time? You run a 9-figure business. You got all this opportunity in front of you, being peppered with different opportunities all the time, different investments, different business ideas. What is the highest and best use of your time today?
Very simple answer. Being a dad. Best use of my time. That's it. That's it. I'm gonna make sure I don't raise a knucklehead for a son. And I'm gonna make sure he has values and a work ethic and treats people with respect and dignity and honor. And he knows, and he's known this since he was 4 years old. A deal is what, Duke? A deal is a deal, Dad. And we don't what in our family? We don't break our deals. And my son will shake your hand and look you in the eye, and I'll be damned. He knows that, you know, he's going to be a man of honor, and that's it.
I love it. Can we give him a round of applause?